Aspiring to be a model, she was brutally murdered in 2005 after a night out. What did she do though? What happened on that fateful night in England? Her screams of agony and fear were just ignored in front of her own house, and by the time a neighbor arrived to check on the situation, it was too late. This is the horrifying story of Sally Bowman. Sally Ain was born in Carshalton, South London, in September of 1987. She was the youngest of four daughters and wanted to be famous. As a side gig, she worked as a hairdresser while she studied at the Brit School, the same prestigious music and theater conservatory that helped Adele and Amy Winehouse develop their careers. She was 6 feet tall and had a modeling career that led to her becoming the face of Swatch, which led to her being signed by Pulse Model Management. On the evening of September 24th of 2005, Sally and her older sister had worked hard all week and were ready to unwind with a night out on the town. The ladies avoided the hassle of getting into London by spending the evening at Lloyd's Bar on Croydon's main drag. Sally had a great day drinking and socializing with her friends, but by 1 a.m., she was ready to head home. The moment she got there, Sally Ain called her ex-boyfriend Lewis, who was at the Works nightclub in Kingston, to come pick her up and drop her off at her house. At around 2:20 a.m., he picked her up and started driving to her house. While they drove, the two of them battled over why the relationship had ended, with each person placing the blame on the other for infidelity. Lewis will never forget the 2 hours she spent arguing with her. Sally was not quite ready to leave her ex-boyfriend yet, so she stayed in the car with a plasterer who was just 20 years old. Sally Ain's cries could be heard by her neighbors at 4:20 a.m., but no one went to check on the source of the distress. She had been stabbed outside her house multiple times before anybody heard her screams, and her perpetrator persisted in his assault when no one came to investigate. Sally Ain was dying at the time, and he raped her savagely. One of Sally's neighbors, who had heard her screams, discovered the 18-year-old near her house. Shortly after her attack, an officer was dispatched, and the home was roped off from the curious passersby who had gathered on the otherwise peaceful street. Sally Ain's autopsy was hastily completed, and the results were unexpected by the authorities. Bite marks were discovered on Sally's neck, breast, and cheek, in addition to the stab wounds, some of which had pierced through her body. The viciousness of the attack stunned everyone, because there were no real witnesses or security cameras. Despite the dense population, the investigation to discover the teenager's murderer began in earnest. There was one piece of evidence on their side though, and that was the killer's DNA, which meant he had left behind a smear of his own. Although phone records revealed that Sally Ain's boyfriend Lewis had threatened her about seeing other men, he was quickly pegged as the prime suspect and subsequently convicted for her murder. A DNA sample was taken from the crime scene, but it did not match the suspect, and therefore he was released 4 days later. Across Croydon, DNA testing commenced nearly 5 months after Sally Ain's murder. Only 771 men of the estimated 340,000 residents volunteered blood and urine samples. The police had exhausted all leads, and the case was dying. Unfortunately, the inquiry into the murder of the 18-year-old had made very little headway by February. But it would be another 4 months before Sally Ain's murderer was caught. Many people in the Croydon area went out on that September Saturday night. There were plenty of places to hang out, as the city boasted over 150 bars and taverns. Sally Ain was having a good time at Lloyd's Pub on the High Street tonight, but 2 miles down the road was another party. Mark Dixie, who turned 35 that day, was having a party in his honor. After getting back from a camping trip earlier in the day, the pub cook and his 2 pals spent the evening drinking at the Windsor Castle Pub. Dixie and his companions left the bar at around 2:30 a.m. and drove to a residence on Avondale Road, where he was left alone on the downstairs sofa to sober up for the remainder of the night. Mark Dixie was arrested on the 15th of June, 9 months later, after getting into a scuffle with another patron during a match between England and Trinidad and Tobago on the football pitch. At this point, the police could take DNA from anyone they caught, regardless of how trivial the offense was. Dixie's tears that day while being questioned and swabbed amused the detention officials. It'll become clear why he had exploded emotionally. Mark Dixie's DNA was processed and returned as a match to the sample obtained on Sally Ann Bowman after 2 weeks. While taking a smoke break at work, police arrested Dixie. In February of 2008, the Old Bailey hosted the murder trial of the pub cook who had pleaded not guilty to killing the 18-year-old. A number of his friends and acquaintances testified against him in court, painting a picture of a bad, not mad, man who used and abused them. The jury learned that Dixie fled without telling his friends, who he locked in their room. Cement dust from a nearby building skid was used to hide the bite scars and poured down Sally Ann's throat in an attempt to eliminate his DNA from her body. It was also revealed in court that Dixie and Sally Ann Bowman were once neighbors. In retrospect, he admitted to raping Sally Ann as she lay dead or dying, but he still denied killing the adolescent, saying instead that he found her unconscious and exploited her vulnerability. He claimed that it was only after biting her cheek that he realized that she was dead. On February 22nd, following 3 hours of discussion, the jury reached a unanimous verdict of guilty on all counts of murder. After receiving a sentence of at least 34 years in jail, he was moved to HMP Franklin in County Durham. The minimum time imposed was among the longest ever imposed in the United Kingdom. Detective Superintendent Cundy addressed the media following the sentencing. Through the course of the trial, the jury learned that Dixie had spent the years 1993 to 1999 in Australia, where he had been living with his girlfriend Sandra and their 2 sons. Concurrently, the Claremont serial killer was stalking the streets of Perth, and for a time, it was believed that Dixie was indeed the killer. He was not the right man, as proved by genetic testing, but Dixie still caused harm to other people. The chef's criminal history included a wide range of offenses, such as robbery, burglary, indecent assault, exposure, and assault on a police officer. He had been deported from Australia for sexual offenses and had gone by several identities, including Mark Down, Stephen McDonald, and Shane Turner. Dixie confessed to killing Sally Ann Bowman in 2015, he admitting to raping 2 additional women as well. The first time happened when he was just 16 years old in 1987. He attacked her and pushed her into her automobile. He had tied her to the door and set fire to the car, but she had broken free. A Thai student studying in Australia in 1998 was robbed at knife point, forced to undress, and stabbed multiple times before being left for dead. Mark Dixie's DNA was detected at the crime scene. The third time, in 2002, was also something that he admitted to. In the stairwell, he assaulted the woman before using a knife sharpener to bash her to death. Reportedly, she managed to escape the assault. Dixie and his girlfriend were supposedly living in Spain when he robbed, assaulted, and abused 3 people. Dixie was given 2 further life terms in 2017 for the assaults that occurred in 1987 and 2002, bringing his total number of convictions to 17. It was questioned at the time by some that Australian authorities had not incarcerated Mark Dixie, or at least added his name to a sex offender registry for his actions. Around that time, Dixie was fined and expelled. Dixie has been linked to several cold cases over the years, including the 2005 murder of homeless woman Jennifer Keeley and the attack on a lady just hours before Sally Ann in the same area. There still appears to be very little new information. I don't understand why they haven't looked for a connection to Dixie if the breakthrough happened over a year ago. Linda, Sally Ann's mother, told The Sun in 2018 that Jennifer's mother deserved an explanation. The identification of Mark Dixie was criticized by Detective Superintendent Stuart Cundy. The government rejected the National DNA Register bill because it was impractical to protect a database of 60 million individuals at the time, and because there were ethical concerns with including everyone in the UK in a database for the sake of making it easier to apprehend criminals. In 2013, the remains of Sally Ann were removed from her burial after her gravestone was vandalized 4 times within 6 months. although her family can finally have some peace of mind because Mark Dixie has admitted to killing their daughter. The legacy of Sally Ain has been sullied by individuals who have little respect for the dead. That's all for the video. We will be right back. Hit the like button and subscribe to our channel.